recall from a couple months ago, we had surveyed everybody and asked them, what would you like to know about military history based on the RTI? Does anybody remember that? So based on that, that's how I started my research with this topic. Somebody recognizes that, right? Now, what I would like us to do is start thinking about military history or RTI history right now with your groups. Start thinking about military history or RTI history. What do you know already? There's enough knowledge in this room now. We could probably nail down a lot of it. So I want to give you just a little bit of an opener. My challenge to you is discuss amongst each other how far back you can go just to RTI history. Is there any questions on what I'm asking of you? Within your group. You might need a group. Within your group. Talk about history that you know of. Within your group. Talk about the history that you know of in the RTI.
And I was looking at this, and it goes back to where the artillery units from like the Civil War. That Minnesota formed, and that's where the 175 was. And it was active in World War I. And that's where on the picture of the shield, the unit shield or the emblem, that's where that Fleur de Lis comes from. Oh yeah. There's something to do with
Yeah.
What? Are you talking
The Red Bull.
the water, the Red Bull water?
Yeah. Hold up.
Oh, is that what it's called? New Mexico.
It's hard to explain.
Y'all know more than that.
It's still wrong. There used to be a drunk trivia question we would play. Yeah. We were sitting in the barracks. Unit trivia? Yep, unit trivia.
All right, thank you for kind of talking to one another, kind of opening up the dialogue, getting a little bit familiarity with, oh, that's how far you go back? Oh, that's what you know? So now I'm starting to gain a little bit of a rapport with my students, with my table mates, with my small group, just by simply asking those few questions. So, in quick review, this group here, could you give me a date on how far you could recall? Or a topic?
World War I. World War I.
World War I. Okay, very good. And what was your tie into that?
The Fleur de Lis on the
On the unit crest?
On the crest, yeah.
Very good, very good. This group here, just quick, just something that came up in common, either a date or time or a topic. 2002. 2002, okay. That's okay, that's okay.
Well, we said that we're in class 61.
Okay, there you go. That's informative. We need to know that. That's good. Do you know the total number of classes? Okay, good, good. It's history, it's facts, it's things we need to know. So very good. What do you guys come up with topics or dates or times about history in your view at your level at this stage? MMA. Has anybody ever heard of MMA? Minnesota Military Academy, precursor to the RTI. Okay, very good. Anything else? BNOC, 1998. BNOC was a the precursor to what we call ALC now. And they held them on Camp Ripley through the MMA. Was your history recall or history discussion? Anything? Was the beginning 1996. Look at that's not that long ago. 1996. Let's start teaching warrants in Minnesota. 1996. That's not that long. Oh, what you guys come up with on this table?
Unit, artillery,
Okay.
and Sergeant Sheelander was one of the founders.
At one time, our unit crest was one of the 175th. An actual unit crest. Okay, very good, very good. So when I got this assignment, I kind of did those same things. So, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? So of course, I start finding my resources. And I want to be able to find out a little history of the RTI. So I dig through my resources, and I find a lot of good information. So as my disclaimer, I must tell you up front, it's very hard to drill down to Pacific RTI history unless you've got that oral history. Where in the heck do I get oral history from? Village elders, Sheelander, past members that no longer are available or deceased or so on and so forth. So oral history, I was very shocked to see that there's not a lot of history on the RTI. And that's the best unit in the state, so we should know everything about our unit. But wow, things got thrown away, things got outdated, every time you take a new desk, you're gonna look at that form and say, boy, this is 10 years old, in the garbage. So, in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, there wasn't a lot of archiving of RTI. One other disclaimer was, so then I'm gonna go right to the Military History Museum. The individual that wrote this works there. And I got a signed copy. Oh boy. So I went there and explained it to her. Yep, you're correct. We don't have a whole lot of that documentation. And as a matter of fact, we are in the process of hiring a historian that did receive truckloads of boxes from throughout the state that was cataloged, but it's not referenceable because they lost their historian. So, a little bit of learning curve real quick. So then, I go to, all right, I'll figure this out. Not a problem. So I'll start making my own darn documentation and I'll start figuring it out. I'll reinvent the wheel. I can't believe it. I have to reinvent the wheel. So I start making it and it starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So in an hour's time, I can't do you justice. But I can give you the big overall picture, and my intent is to have another LDP to add to the specifics of the RTI. I spoke directly to the camera. So, we're still going to learn something. How are we going to learn it? I'm going to give you some basic introductions on this graphic, which is sometimes called a roadmap to our learning. We're going to start right here. I'm going to give you the introduction. I'm going to give you some tasks and some times, and then I'm going to ask if you have any questions. From there, we're going to move to the prep of what these tasks were, and then we'll have a little bit of presentation. We'll share our knowledge, or we'll transfer it, and bing, we'll come to the end. Now, in order to accomplish this, I would like to be able to make you aware of, well, one of the questions always is, well, how much time? Well, how long do you want us to do it? So, to keep my students engaged and involved, I want them to know, look at, I altered things in case it gets worse. So I have plan B or C right there. Okay, so with this little bit of information I've given you already, we're at 10-minute window. We're at my 10-minute window. So now, my assignments to you are to come up with two multiple choice questions from the reference material I'm going to give you amongst your small group. And I'd like you to come up with one true or false. And I'd like you to come up with a graphic of some nature that you can share your learning experience with. The graphic could be a road, or the graphic could be a timeline. If your subject was World War II, pre-World War dates in the 30s, late 30s, in the heat of the battle, and then at the end. So you could, from the reference I give you, you could draw out those crucial dates. Any questions so far? I'm popping them out there real quick. Any questions? I need a review, sir. What am I asking?
You're gonna give us 15 minutes to do a task, which is to create those.
You're on it. So, now the next part is, what are we gonna study on? I need a group leader, and the group leader will be. Okay, you got it, Chief, or sir, you got it. I need a group leader. Go ahead, hand it out, make a game plan. You study this, I'll study that. Remember, we need 2 questions. Who's your group leader? Not it. The good old not it. That is so classic. I love it. Ooh, you got a nice topic here. You got 15 minutes to prep, 10 minutes to present. 1/3, 2/3. So take your time seriously, sign off tasks, and come up with 2 questions and 1 true and false, and a timeline. Who's our group leader? Ooh, and then the core. God. The joys of the bottom of the reading. So, science task, talk about these things. Group involved, one guy doing all over, doing all the things.
And that's where case study.
Oh, good. You were nominated. You were nominated. So, amongst your group, come up with information. And if we get done at 15, great. But come up with a minimum 2 questions, multiple choice. Oh, yeah. Whoever brought a notepad has never bring a notepad to class.
Sir, someone's talking about getting NCOE hardball.
You haven't signed it yet, though.
So, bare minimum 2 questions, multiple choice in style, 1 true and false, and then a graph.
What are the challenges?
Or road trip.
What is the process to create a plate?
Okay, ready, go.
Nobody knows.
We're talking about the NCOE. NCOES.
Then he just goes and puts his feet up on the desk.
Yeah. Facilitator, that guy. Okay, we said he was group leader, so who nominated him as group leader?
Okay, so.
Who wants to pick a color? Who wants to pick a color? Since we nominated him, he can't pick a color. Who wants to really
This is guessing.
All right, so we're talking about Stand the task.
Have some multiple choice questions. Everybody's going to answer these multiple choice questions.
and draw a timeline?
We got to use that board up there.
Who is the Combat Arms Force Manager? A. Sergeant Major. Sergeant Major. C. Sergeant Major. D. All the above.
Talk about history. Say, you've been like this in your book.
True or false? First classification is history of combat arms.
Pick a color for your chart.
We should ask a question.
Quick, we're counting.
And you're gonna put a green chart, so that could be your draft. So these are two different drawings.
So that is the Minnesota that's going to Korea, I'm gonna assume.
So here we are. Military's been kicking ass, taking names for a long time. And guess what? 1973, we should have all training the same. 1973 trade says we should have all things the same. All right, infantry POI, or infantry school, or infantry suite. You do your way, I'll do mine. When I get to the battlefield, if you're successful, it's because you trained right, and if you weren't successful, it's because I didn't share my knowledge. Fine, that 1973, we should do it. Seeing a pattern.
Who was it in World War II that said something about doctrine and why we could never get in the United States because
It was
follow doctrine?
wrong. That we have a doctrine, but
No,
we
that's a
don't
good
follow.
draft. It's posted on to the board.
There's a That's a good one. Yes.
Let's look at what's back down.
Bringing technology.
How about that?
Yeah, the RTI have anything though? The RTI still
The RTI wasn't actually established until 1996.
What's that?
It's not as clear cut as we want it to be, but as you know,
It shows here that, no, it's bad.
We're gonna drop. We have to do a draft. In 1973, the draft of one. U.S. troops were withdrawn from Vietnam and U.S. 1973.
One of your drink was probably.
Banana. That's A. No. Yeah. A is banana. B is.
with your marker, here's your cool
So we're gonna put C.
board to make either a roadmap or a timeline.
So, I'm gonna just make an assumption we could start at 54, around December 54. Yeah.
And then notice in 52, somebody was already there. Your recon party, your advanced party, your main element, somebody was already there. Only because they had one certain skill. What was that? Anti-aircraft. Minnesota, you're great. Just send us your anti-aircraft. 1952, we want them now. Okay, we'll go. We don't know how to do it. It's kind of new to us. But the rest of you clowns, you can show up 2 years later.
They cannot figure.
We need somebody. You sandbag.
Okay.
Do you want to throw questions up there too?
You can, that wasn't, that's a good question that I should have asked.
I'll draw.
But my basic requirement is.
I bet our segment is the Korean War.
Make them understand the 10 minutes and 15 minutes sometimes.
Oh, shit, there it is. Timeline.
We're not trying to stop it.
There's our road.
So I can sit down, it's easier. I think you can guess.
No, don't end the roadmap until. Oh, we're starting. Yeah, Korean War is gonna be at the bottom because it goes through like 80.
I hear learning.
86. All NCO academies will be done directly. Installation. How not? Sorry.
I have to write it.
Okay.
There's a whole lot of it.
Yeah, good, right? I'm not trying to throw them under the bus.
NCS course began.
All right. Come up here and help me. I say.
Yeah.
Are you making this multiple choice question? Just make it two.
And you can use your cell phones, you can use any available references. ALMS 2000, we need to use digitals. And I can be a reference. Embarrassing, or it's a sign of change. Things will change.
There's a major road. Yeah, when serious
This top one too, I was like, 1973. LCS started.
Yeah, you're right.
I got one. True or false?
Oh, true or false?
Yeah.
True and false and multiple choice.
We can make more if we want. So the Tim Hudsworth there in 1971.
Of course, have a plan to present it. I'll be the talker, you'll be the slide guy. Blah, 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 blah. Two questions of multiple choice and then one true or false.
One multiple choice and one.
Two multiple choices and one true or false.
Got it.
Okay, let's make up.
And I even wrote it down. And I even wrote it down.
Yes.
We need a multiple choice question.
NCOES courses were started to A, standardize, B, Give a reason for SST completion.
Are you gonna hog the show and do everything, or are you gonna share Oh, okay, good. Yeah.
The what? What? No. There's more. There's more dollars that go into the building and making all the media work than there ever is people getting the information. It's a contract.
They'll need it, right? They'll need it. You're gonna offer your.
Officers have their fair share. I don't think we're of SSD.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I know we're not of SSD, but I don't think the time to go.
Give somebody else some questions. This guy true or false. There's three. I know. I get to take ours.
Why is it started?
Started two standardized. Two standardized. Oh, you mean standardized.
Approximately 5 minutes remaining. Approximately 5 minutes remaining.
I think I know easy.
I don't know why we do all these difficult LDPs after the Christmas party. We need to think about this. Courses for.
I don't know. You never guys got up to the founding father.
For the There's got to be another good answer.
I don't think I'm
Let's have another right answer. Then they have to choose the best answer, the most correct. There's several correct answers.
Minnesota connection with Kensington Stone discovery.
Hey, Frank Ivy.
We good to go? We got
It's not set the bar too high over there, right? What's that? It's not set the bar too high over there.
How's the roadmap coming?
It's funny you see that, but I can't get a DRA done. It's funny you can do that, but I can't get a DRA done.
That's because my inflict staff is failed.
All right, we're coming to end of our timeline. We can always buy more time. If you need more time, we're going to take more time. The more time you prep, the better presentation will be.
More time.
You guys good?
Who's gonna be our briefer? I had to organize a shit.
I got a question. It looks like Chief's the only one that hasn't really.
Oh, no.
That's right. I should read the paper.
You can read the question already.
Okay, where's the question?
So who's going to be our brave crew to say, I got this, I can handle this, that's our trip. There we go. Whoa. So, how long do you need to present this material?
Okay, that question right there. Okay.
I don't know what the career stuff is. Don't read
There's no correlation. Just kind of same time frame.
It's kind of showing that. Why don't you just read your question and the answer? Read your question. Just read your question. You know what I mean? Yeah, when it comes to the question, give her a isn't so much you start questions first or you guys want to
All right, so you guys good to go?
Yeah. No. What's that? Oh, okay.
Wasn't on camera though.
No, it wasn't.
All right, so let's give our undivided attention to this group over here. Ready, go. Transfer knowledge, teach me.
Welcome group. My name is Sergeant First Class Geisy. I'm an MSlick instructor at 2nd Battalion, 175th RTI. I'm going to give you a brief history on 2 of the 135 Infantry. So I got 2 questions posted up there. I don't want answers right now. I'm going to get answers at the end. I just want to find out if you change your answers from the beginning to the end. The first question is a true-false. If you can't read my scrawl, it says 2 of the 135 gets its unit motto, "To the last man," from the Battle of Gettysburg. It's a true or false question. Number 2, which flag still hangs in the state capitol to this day that 2 of the 135 captured on 3 July 1863? So think about those answers, make a mental note of what they are, and we'll see if you change those answers at the end of this class. So I'm going to talk to you about 2 of the 135. On December 20th, 1860, South Carolina seceded from the Union. That began a series of other states leaving the Union, which ultimately led in April to the start of the Civil War. A couple weeks after that, the 1st Minnesota is created. 10 companies form up down at Fort Snelling. They go off the train, prepare to go to war. We're going to move all the way forward from that point to 2-3 July 1863. When I came to the Minnesota Army National Guard, I went to Bravo Company, 2 of the 135 Infantry. My very first day there, the Readiness NCO gave me 2 books. The Last Full Measure, which is a story of 2 of the 135, or the 1st Minnesota rather, through the whole Civil War, and A Pale Horse at Plum Run, which is a specific book about the Battle of Gettysburg and the 1st Minnesota at the Battle of Gettysburg. Anybody know the significance of what 2 of the 135, or the 1st Minnesota did at the Battle of Gettysburg? Right. So, in the state of Minnesota, we have a unit that has the finest traditions and heritage of any unit in the military anywhere. So those guys who come from the 101st Airborne, those folks come from the 82nd Airborne, all those active duty components, the Ranger regiments that have these long, outstanding histories, the National Guard has those as well. So the 1st Minnesota, the Battle of Gettysburg, what happened, they woke up on 2 July, and they were up there, a big round top, you can see the circle, and then little round top, which is a small circle with the top next to it. And they were surrounded all the way around. Confederates, Union lines with the green lines, Confederates with the black lines. But what happened is an entire regiment of Alabamans began to roll up the flank, come up the bottom side there of Cemetery Ridge. What the Union general did is he sent 2 units. He sent the 1st Minnesota, and he also sent a battalion of soldiers from New Hampshire to go down and stop the Alabamans. The numbers vary depending upon who you talk to. The exact timeline varies depending upon who you talk to, simply because they didn't keep good records then. But ultimately, what is pretty much accepted is 300 Minnesotans faced off against 1,000 Alabamans. The Union general was hoping to buy several minutes so he could rally his forces and send up reserves. Those 300 Minnesotans stopped those Alabamans in their tracks. And not only stopped them in their tracks, they sent them packing. They left the field. At the end of that battle, again, the numbers vary depending upon what book you're reading, but somewhere around 45 Minnesotans stood to answer muster. That's how they earned the motto, "To the last man." The very next morning, and this is the part of history that's often lost, but I think is more significant, those 45 soldiers, combined with Delta Company from their unit, which was detached UKP duty, formed back up, approximately 100 soldiers. Anybody know what happened on 3 July 1863 at the Battle of Gettysburg and Cemetery Ridge? Pickett's famous charge. Confederate forces, Lee launched his forces into the assault, and they came forward. Anybody know who the 1st Minnesota squared off against? 28th Virginia. Roughly 300 Virginian soldiers who were battle depleted and suffered pretty significant casualties. Nonetheless, 300 of their soldiers came forward against 100 Minnesotans. Okay? Keep in mind, half of those soldiers had watched everybody that they knew die the day before. They stood up and they moved forward. And once again, not only did they stop the Virginians, they sent them packing. They also captured their battle flag, which still flies today in the state capitol. And every year, the state of Virginia sends a letter to the state of Minnesota, says we'd like our flag back. And every year, the state of Minnesota says the state of Virginia, come and take it. To this date, they haven't done so. It's important for your soldiers to understand history. It's important for the soldiers to know where we came from and what we stand for. So every soldier at 2 of the 135, at least when I was there, understood what that motto, "To the last man," meant. What the people who came before us sacrificed. So when you're out there in the suck, you can think back to what those people did, and I guarantee you most people in this room didn't face off against 1,000 soldiers, wake up the next morning and face off against 300, and not only beat them, send them packing. That concludes my block of instruction.
Very good. You've got a bar set high. Very good.
So did anybody change your answers? Was there learning? Excellent.
Excellent. Now, maybe it's too much infantry for you, but I'm going to tie that in here when we get to this unit crest. But thank you very much. Now,
What? Sure? No.
our next group, and that's okay. That's okay. We're all brothers in arms. Our next group, what was your topic?
Lineage and honors.
Okay, go ahead.
Is that how I'm doing it? Because you guys look at me like, stand up there, guys. Yeah. I know it was. First off, you suck. That's all right, our topic was lineage and honors. We're doing a timeline, and I have a couple questions. So we're talking about basically from 1864 all the way to 1942, at least on this paper. So really, this is going to be as dry as I possibly can make it. So 1864, 1st Battalion, 175th, organized as a heavy artillery. And then it moved up, kind of hang out for a bit. It moves up to about 1889. It was redesignated. This is pretty much the history of this is redesignations. So redesignated in 1889 as the 1st Battalion of Mounted Troops. Moving up to 1913, redesignated as the 1st Field Artillery. They moved up to 1917, 151st Field Artillery, and attached to the 42nd Division. And then redesignated to 34th Division. And in 1919, the elements reorganized to the Minnesota National Guard as 1st Field Artillery. And in 1942, they divorced, apparently. They broke up. Questions on what else to do on that one? Any history that I missed?
I can share questions. What MOS has not been taught by the RTI?
What MOS has not been taught?
Alpha 11 series, Bravo 13 series, Charlie 19 Delta, and Delta 31 series.
Did you hear that?
13 series. 18 series.
Okay.
And the correct answer was?
Correct answer is?
The 31 MP, the last one. I do have on here on the sheet.
31.
13 has been taught.
Okay, for your true false. Eleazar Wheelock Ripley, a Minnesota politician, is the man Camp Ripley is named after.
True.
Only 2 people are guessing.
That's false.
More
It-
participation, man. Get
It
out.
is. It is false. Eleazar Wheelock Ripley is true part of the statement, but he was not a Minnesota politician. He was he was a representative in Louisiana, although he was from New Hampshire. And your last question for this group. How many cities or counties are named after Eleazar Wheelock Ripley? 2, 4, 5, or 7?
7.
You're in the background.
Huh?
So what?
7 is correct.
7, correct.
So in addition to Fort Ripley, 6 other historical states have identified that man was pretty popular. He did a lot of magic stuff.
Which states are not historical?
Good point. Go ahead and draw that out. What are the other people that have recognized that
We
person's
have
skill?
Ripley, Ohio, Ripley County, Indiana, Ripley County, Missouri, Ripley, New York, Ripley, Tennessee, and Ripley, Mississippi.
You
No
must-
Louisiana or New Hampshire, which is where he is sitting.
Must impress somebody. Must have had some good skill sets. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll tie into that also as we continue on with the back of that sheet there. All right, next group, who's ready? All right, take it away. What is your topic? What assignment did you have?
So our assignment was NCOES, and also we had some sheets on the Korean War. So we created a timeline, and there is a noticeable gap between the two, but our timeline starts in June of '52 when the first unit from Minnesota deployed to Korea. We were told this was an anti-air group, and that was one of the reasons they were first tapped. And then there was a whole bunch more, like probably 14, 15 other units that all went in and around this 1954. Moving into the NCOES, October of '73, it is established in Fort Benning to kind of bring everyone's knowledge together and really create the base of what we all do today. In September of '74, NCOSI is established as a battalion. December of '74, NCOSI is officially established schoolhouse. ACO was running BNOC, and Bravo Company was running PLC. In April of '84, PLDC is at Fort Benning. In 1986, TRADOC Academies belong to installations. And July '88, the NCO Academy was established, and in '89, official year of the NCO. And then, so that kind of runs us through our timeline, and these gentlemen have some questions for you guys.
True or false, NCOES courses began the same time U.S. troops were withdrawn from Vietnam?
True.
False.
It's true.
It's true? Okay, it's
True, sir. 1975 was the end of Vietnam.
thought we were saying it was false. Got it.
Well, he was asking all you fine people.
All right, a multiple choice question. Each branch blank is responsible for developing the critical task to be taught and evaluated at the particular branch at the basic and advanced NCO education levels. Is it the commanding general, the chief of infantry, or the commandant?
Fill in the blank. Who's responsible for that training for their branch?
Yes, comment.
A lot of power down to one person.
NCOS courses were started for A, create a total Army family, B, justification for the SSD courses, C, to standardize doctrine, D, provide a reason for the DTS site. C is correct.
Say it again. C is
C is to standardize doctrine.
19 what?
73.
Finally, in 1973, we've got to have the same sheet of music Army-wide. Up to that point, what was happening? You do it your way, and I hope you are successful, because I'm going to do it my way. 1973, finally, the infantry school says, hey, this ain't right, we got to lock this down. History from World War I, II, III, Vietnam, we're doing something wrong. All right, what's our next group? What's going to be? And what is your...
The timeline that we're looking at for Camp Ripley is from 1930 to around 1942, roughly. So in 1930, they began construction of what we know as the cantonment area. The first building was the Nelson Hall, which is the DNR building. That was the headquarters building, the original headquarters building. That it started late 1930, like December, and then from 1931, or actually from 1934 to 1942, they built a whole gamut of additional buildings to include 2-1, which was the RTI was at that building at one time. I don't know if that was original or
Rosenberg Hall, 2-1.
so. Yeah, that was Rosenberg Hall. Thanks for mentioning that. So the project from 1934 to 1942, that was that was kind of where a lot of the buildings and stuff, it didn't really get into a lot of details of what buildings they were, but just there was a lot of construction going on. And then it kind of built up to World War II, you know, in 1941, you know, it was, in 1940 they could train up to 12,000 troops, they had capacity for 12,000 troops. And my question, the multiple choice, how many buildings were built in 1931?
Ballpark guess.
C.
It says 6, 12, 3, or 9.
Oh yeah, if you can you read it?
C.
The answer is D, 9. There was an original 9 building, 6 of them were less high.
1931.
Very good.
True or false? False. The original building is still standing. Oh, and then a bonus tidbit, this is extra. 12,000, the original purchase, land-wise was 12,000 acres, and then now it's 53,000 acres. So over like, of course, 30 years, they've purchased more land in the area, and now it's at 53,000. One more, can anybody tell me in miles, dimensions of Camp Ripley?
18 miles long by 9.5 miles wide.
Close. The 18 miles are long, is correct, and it's 7 miles wide. So pretty significant real estate. So any questions?
What I'd like, thank you very much. What I'd like to add to that, again, look at that timeline in history. World War II is done, completed, the Depression comes in the 20s, and now the 30s, Prohibition starts coming. So now they see things happening in the rest of the globe, so they're starting to ramp up. And they need money to do that. So they're starting to make agreements and arrangements, and somebody in the state of Minnesota was shaking hands with somebody at the Pentagon or somebody at the Department of War at that time. So there was a connection right down here, local level of, throw me some money, what are you going to do with it? I will prepare for a mob site. So there was planning taking place, and it takes a long time. Also, I would mention the mess hall, or the DNR building was the headquarters. The lumber and paneling that is in that building now came from the Capitol down in Minneapolis. They did some remodeling, and some local person said, hey, don't throw that crap away, we can use it up there. So somebody has documented this, somebody has been analyzing some of that history. Okay, so moving on to this table, saving the best for last.
Yeah.
What is your topic?
All right, so actually, kind of, Mr. Trump was talking about for the money-wise, this kind of goes along with that in a way. So we just kind of put a timeline down to make it look pretty, but we're only actually talking about 1 year, 1903. Now, the Militia Act of 1903, that was established to give all the National Guard funding, federal funding, but also be able to be federalized, so be able to deploy, but this also gave the federal funding to get the equipment, get the training, the ATs, all that stuff. The Militia Act of 1903 is also known as the Efficiency Act, which they also had another name as the Dick Act, which I would not want to have an act named that.
Based on the individual that wrote the... Sorry, I didn't want to mislead anyone.
So, but no, it is correct. It was named the Dick Act after Charles Dick, who was the creator of this act. But because of this act, this allowed that to happen, to be able to get the funding that it's needed. Now, the National Guard, the federal government was, they needed us, and they wanted us to make sure we're the same, going with the active army, doing the same training, the same everything, and that's why they created this act. It was in 1903. Now, questions. The Militia Act in 1903 was also known as the Dick Act. True or false? The Dick Act was named after who? Sheelander, Charles Dick, George W. Bush, or Dick Tracy?
Shalander.
Correct. Oh, yeah. You don't break that one.
There's also a bonus question that they came up with. The Dick Deck is as old as Keith Sheelander, true or false?
Lander.
Thank you up for that. All right, thank you very much. Now, what I'd like to add to that is he is correct on the states receiving funding. Up to that point, the governors were saying, this is my militia. This is my militia. And they will stay here for Indian raids. They will stay here for great floods. They will stay here for my state's purpose. World War II's World War I's rolling around. They're saying, no, you know what, Dubs? We're going to take them and we're going to use them because our active army forces aren't that large. We don't have enough money to sustain our active army forces. So, governors, play well, give us your men. Governor said, hold up, time out. You ain't paying us squat. Okay, somebody in Congress says, all right then, here, we'll throw you money. Now will you play? And then boom, the bandwagon starts. Boom, they start building, boom, they start building. So I wanted to share a little bit about the unit crest. The unit crest. Might have enough. You said you brought it here, so I'm going to find it here in a second. Oh, here it is.
We got 3 or 4 this week.
And give you guys some too. I got a bunch of them. Wasn't sure how many was going to show up. Pass them on. Pass them on.
We got the first couple pages. We got the first couple pages of that.
I'm going to keep going. I want you to all to be proud to have one. When we do the next training on military history. Who doesn't have one? I got 2 left. Yes, there is a roster, but I want to save that for the end of my class because it might distract us. Alrighty. Let's go to this unit crest. Right here, this unit crest of your handout. And it's identifying some of the symbology of that unit crest. We've talked about some of these items already. Can anybody guess, just by looking at that crest, these history topics that we discussed? Anybody?
Rainbow for the 42nd.
42nd Rainbow Division, fighting in France. Leech Lake, the last soldier to get a Medal of Honors in the Indian Wars were from Leech Lake. That was the last Civil War soldier to get a Medal of Honor, was from right here in Minnesota at the Battle of Leech Lake. 42nd Division, I don't know if it was Patton, but a famous general said, we need more bodies. And the Guard Bureau and the Department of War said, well, what do you want? Anybody, shove them through here. So they got people from one end of the rainbow to the other end of the rainbow to form the 42nd Division. So that's the symbology of the rainbow. Famous, somebody said, wow, you got everybody here from one end of the rainbow to the other. Yep, let's go. All right, anything with this cacti?
Has to be the next for the border.
Mexican-American border war. That is never ever stopped. I'll show you documentation where they've always had people manned on that Mexican border. Never stopped manning that Mexican border. All right, so the verbiage here.
Courage of Baylor.
Who speaks Latin?
Courage of Baylor.
Very good, very good. Now, for more accurate description of that, you can go to this page and it'll identify the shield. Page 9 of your handout. It will identify that shield. And it'll call out those topics. So on your sheet that is having things to fill in on, you can fill in based off of sheet 9. It will answer those blanks for you. Now, we mentioned infantry. This is not in color. However, artillery, what color is artillery normally? On our unit crests, what color is that cross? Blue. So, combined artillery and infantry don't need to be fighting each other. One can't claim fame to the other because they're using red and blue. The teamwork. The teamwork. Okay, so another fun fact here. When did the National Guard change from militia? I'm on this slide. When did the National Guard change from militia to National Guard? I'm on this slide right here. Where's the bottom? 1903, we finally became called the National Guard. Up to that point, we were militias. And how did we become this? Who dreamt up National Guard? Where did it come from? No. There was a French trainer that brought his honor guard over to help train. Lafayette. And the terminology in French was honor guard, power guard, whatever. And then Americans adapted, hey, let's not use militia no more. Let's use National Guard. All right? Cost of this building, back in the day. Cost of this building. Somebody find out the cost of this building back in the day. Original cost came in at one of the few buildings in Minnesota's military history that they allowed their budget to have some Art Deco. They allowed the budget to go a little fancy. Other than that, it's just supposed to be a brick and mortar, no buzzers, no whistles. But this is one of the few buildings in Minnesota that the past leaders said, okay, let's do a little bit on there. Rosenberg was the individual they named it after. He was the first USPFO commanding officer, so he had all the money coming in him. That building used to have, if you notice the picture, if you zoom in on that picture, you can't tell. That picture shows that all the windows were barred because that became the first armory. And they had the money and the bullets and the guns in that building right there. State arsenal was one of its terminologies as it progressed through time. Korea War, some tidbits on Korea War. Your grandpas or uncles. Not all units that went to Korea from Minnesota served in combat. The original units that showed up in 52, they were knocking them down. They were in the combat. The units that showed up in 54, and they ended up being supporting roles. It was still a sucky thing to be in. More cold weather deaths than bullets in the Korean War because of lack of supply, lack of logistics. After the Korean War, the powers to be sat down and said, look, we're setting them up. They're getting slaughtered. We need to do something about it. Federal legislation came up with the Military Federal Technician Plan, and it stated that we need stay-at-home people to keep the logistical train going. So if we are going to call out the Guard, we can't let them sit there and freeze to death without having proper boots or proper gear. So after the Korean War in 1956, the Federal Technician Program was invented to support the National Guards, so they have stay-home logistical flow-through. All right. Let's see, now we're rolling up. We talked a little bit about TRADOC. Look at this, some of the things TRADOC requires us to do. Am I making all this stuff up? What's the name of this one? Title of it. TRADOC. Yeah, and then what's the actual block? TRADOC has a PAM on instruction of military history, a requirement for TRADOCs to conduct military history. It's not just the schoolhouse or somebody valuing it. On the back side of that page, what do we got going on here? What's the next trade documentation? And summarize that. What's your takeaway from that document, or that title? Sign-in rosters going around. Sign-in rosters going around. What's your takeaway from that title? Anybody want to take a stab at it? Come on, you guys gotta decipher that. It means that if you're going to have a National Guard, we want you to have active Army training with it. So we will allow liaisons to be there to support your training so you're not making it up. All right, turning the page, we got a graph showing our TRADOC organizations. We're showing an ordnance organization map layout. Our medics, where is your main TRADOC seam cell? Medics, we got any medics? 16 keys.
Sam Houston? Sam Houston.
I don't know why I'm asking.
We are too.
Okay, yep. Well, we're gonna find out. Unfortunately, we don't have any second battalion medics here. Okay, they're in some training. That's okay. So now the future of the military. Here we go. Look what they're doing in basic training now. Look what they're focusing on now. Once that sign-in roster is gone, you can leave. Once you sign a roster, you can leave. So that concludes my brief presentation on military history in general. It's tied into our Minnesota National Guard. It's tied into our RTI. There will be more information that follows. Please keep this packet. Any other questions? All right. Once the sign-in's done, good job.